The desire for growth is innately human, and video games capture this incredibly well. The topic of self-improvement has been discussed time after time, and has proved to be a central theme of what it means to be human. In this video, I'll begin by briefly emphasizing how growth discourse has been relevant in different fields, followed by a quick showcase of its depiction across various artistic mediums, before reaching the core argument of how video games serve as great vehicles for experiences of growth. I could just give you my personal view on the importance of growth, but since that might not be enough for you, let's take it a step further and see what philosophy has to say about it. Aristotle, the man who stated that a baby's goat's gender depended on where the wind was blowing at conception, also had some minor views related to growth. A central topic of Aristotle philosophy was that of eudaimonia, which is just a fancy Greek word for the state of happiness derived from being a good spirit, and as such, Aristotle described that to achieve eudaimonia, one must reach a state of competence and excellence, in relation to reason, of course, and to reach such excellence, the mastery of relevant skills is needed, which I would describe as a need for growth. Friedrich Nietzsche, mostly known by his killer mustache and also for being a German philosopher, put emphasis in the term self-overcoming, in which he stated that we must accept the hardships that life naturally presents, as overcoming them is what leads to growth. Again, growth is presented as a natural consequence of life, showcasing that the two go hand in hand. To finish up the boring part of this video, I want to briefly tell you about the psychology behind wanting to improve. I am even less of an expert on psychology than I am of philosophy, which says a lot, so I'll keep this section light. Abraham Maslow was an American psychologist who created Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which places the need for self-actualization, often defined by personal growth, at the top of the pyramid. Later on, Henry Murray devised an alternative system of needs, this time dividing them into two categories. Primary, consisting of human necessities such as the need for water and food, and secondary, in which the need for achievement is highlighted and further explored by David McClelland. As you have seen, the topics of self-improvement and growth have long been discussed and analyzed, and it is safe to say that growth and the pursuit of it is intrinsically human. Before we move on to the core part of the video, I would like to give an abstract timeline of depictions of growth and improvement in artistic mediums, more specifically literary works, to provide some examples on the various ways in which these themes have been touched upon, so we can make a comparison to how video games treat them later on. I'll start by talking about two prominent figures in mythology, who I heavily associate with growth and overcoming, the Phoenix and Hercules. The Phoenix, as most of us are aware, is often described as a multicolored, eagle-like creature with fiery eyes and surrounded by a halo of sunlight. The myth of the Phoenix revolves around its life cycle, as when it nears its end, the Phoenix rises from the ashes in order to renew itself and begin a new cycle. This rebirth symbolizes resilience and perseverance, but also renewal as a way of growing. That is, the end of a cycle brings forth the beginning of a new one, resulting in an inherent opportunity of growth. We also have the tale of Hercules, technically Heracles, but I will use the most commonly used name, which, if you have seen a Disney movie about him, you probably know what I'm going to talk about, the labors. Hercules, after killing his wife and children in a crazed rage, was presented with the 12 labors as both a manner of penance and an opportunity to become a legendary hero. In my understanding, the 12 labors not only symbolize the hardships that nature presents, and which humankind must overcome, but also the manner in which, through perseverance and self-improvement, one can become worthy of godlike status, a message that has proved to be recurring throughout time. The tale of Hercules brings me to a literary template famously analyzed by Joseph Campbell, named The Hero's Journey, consisting of a hero who is called to adventure, who is faced with terrible adversity that requires growth, often passed by a mentor, and who returns home after the journey, transformed. This template is extremely popular and commonly used, and I would argue that the reason is that we, as humans, crave for a story of adventure that both breaks monotony and challenges us to grow. Common examples of this trope or template are novels like The Odyssey and Journey to the West, Movies like the original Star Wars or Lord of the Rings trilogies, or even mythical tales, such as that of Hercules, as I have talked about before. To finish up this section, here are some quickfire examples of pop culture characters that embody growth. Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender, whose whole character arc revolves around his journey to become a hero. See what I did there? By going from a kid driven by anger and the need to prove himself to a true kind-hearted and humanistic lord to be. Boruto's dad, which turns out has 2 whole shows about him growing and earning his place as Ninja Mayor. And lastly, Brooklyn Nine-Nine's finest, Jacob Peralta, whose growth is perfectly shown in both the dialogue between Terry and Holt in the pilot and its reference in the series finale.
It's funny. On my first day here, I asked Jeffers to tell me about everyone. Told me you were a great detective, but the one thing you couldn't figure out was how to grow up. Well, I think you finally figured it out.
And finally, we reach the reason why you clicked the video in the first place: video games. Video games are a somewhat recent medium, and as such often face criticism or are overlooked as something superficial and useless. But anyone who is willing to put in the effort and consume video games as they would any other art form, and yes, I do consider games somewhat of an art form, but that's a topic for later on, easily realize that there is more than meets the eye. One of the greatest characteristics of video games, which other mediums often fail to provide, is immersion. I think that anyone that plays games has come across one that completely involves them and pulls them into its world. As such, video games prove to be a near perfect way to depict the core theme of this essay: growth. This growth comes in many ways, and today I will talk about a couple of them. Let's begin with one of the pillars of video games: the mechanics. When you think of a game's mechanics, one of the first things that come to mind, at least for me, is its progression system. These systems can be various, such as item or exploration-based progression, but today I want to focus on 3 types of progression systems: experience-based, skill-based, and narrative-based. Keep in mind that progression systems are not mutually exclusive. Experience-based progression is probably the most video gamey style out there, consisting of a player earning experience points through the completion of various tasks, and using said experience to grow their character, be it through overall level ups, skill points used in skill trees, upgrades to things like HP or stamina, or unlocking certain mechanics. XP-based progression feels the most video game-like, since it builds a direct connection between action and progression, which is promptly depicted through UI elements. Most RPGs incorporate elements of XP-based progression. Narrative progression comes from completing certain missions or side quests that unlock further locations and objectives, normally tying up to the overall narrative of the game. Story-based games, such as Detroit Become Human and the Telltale games, rely on dialogue options and player decisions to progress the story and the characters, with choices often impacting the path and growth of the protagonist. Lastly, we have the progression system that, in my opinion, both provides and relies on personal improvement from the player the most, which is skill-based progression. As the name suggests, games with this progression system rely on players improving and honing their skill in order to progress. Take for example the Fodian genre, which started with Getting Over It. Most people will look at a game and think, this is just a rage bait game for streamers to play and entertain an audience, but I believe it goes much further than that. Yes, it's true, these games are frustrating and feel somewhat unfair at times, but that's the message they want to portray. Fodian games, much like life itself, don't hold your hand and provide you with safety nets. Instead, they throw you out there and let you experience them firsthand. And whenever you fail and fall, nothing ends. You just have to pick yourself up and keep going at it. And with time, you will improve to the point where an unscalable mountain becomes just a pebble in your way. That is skill-based progression, and that is growth. Now, I would like to focus on 2 genres that mean a lot to me and inspired this video in the first place: roguelikes and Soulsborne. Roguelikes, for those who aren't aware, are games that are built around a gameplay loop or cycle, often referred to as runs. These runs tend to be short but difficult, with randomly generated paths that provide each run with a unique feel but all connected by one constant: if you die, you start it all over. This might seem drastic, but much like the myth of the phoenix, each death is promptly followed by the renewal of a rebirth, and each life cycle lets you grow stronger, so that you can come closer to your objective. This genre provides you with a slow and steady progression that feels extremely rewarding. It might just be me, but there aren't many feelings in gaming greater than finally being able to defeat Hades after countless tries, or two, after carefully planning and strategizing, reach the top and at last slay that spire. Now, for the subgenre of games that provided me with probably my favorite gaming experiences, Soulsborne, and more specifically, my dear Dark Souls. If you have any basic knowledge of games, you have probably heard the name Dark Souls somewhere before. And even if you have never seen anything about it, you probably know it is synonymous to something difficult and unforgiving. Now, you might be wondering why people enjoy a genre of games that it's so hard that it replaced the word itself in gaming vocabulary. And to that, my sweet summer child, I can only reply, growth. I know, that was a little on the nose given the topic of this video, but it's true. The whole reason why I came up with the idea for this essay in the first place was my love for Dark Souls. Dark Souls and the rest of the Soulsborne let you experience firsthand your own sort of hero's journey when you are faced with your own labors that instill something very meaningful into you as a player. Get good. Literally, that's what these games are about. When faced with great adversity, the only thing you can genuinely do is to improve, to grow. You have to scale the enormous mountain in front of you. There is no way to avoid it, and so you must throw yourself into the beast, and fail, and fail, and fail, and fail, until you start to gradually improve, through trial and error, through perseverance and resilience, through copious amounts of practice and pattern recognition, getting slightly closer to defeating whatever roadblock presents to you, until finally the attempt comes when all the effort you have put into the fight culminates into a glorious victory, and damn does it feel good. I have never scaled Mount Everest, but I seriously doubt it feels half as good as finally defeating Ornstein and Smough for the first time. That is the beauty of the Soulsborne genre. They present you with the perfect depiction of growth in video games, how it is essential for the human spirit, and how rewarding it feels when you accomplish something, especially when it seemed unobtainable at first. And at the end of your journey, you face and hopefully defeat the gods themselves, proving that there is nothing we cannot conquer as long as we put in the time and effort needed to grow. Feel free to leave a comment with other games that you feel are good depictions of growth. As I have hopefully clearly portrayed throughout this video, not only does growth and its discussion show up in various areas and mediums, the way it is depicted also changes and evolves, or should I say, grows. Be it through philosophical discussion, psychological analysis, myths, literary tropes, pop culture characters, or even video games, growth remains a central topic to what it means to be human. This analysis was more focused on video games, as I believe it is a medium that, although often overlooked, can provide us with meaningful themes and important lessons as much as other art forms. Not only can games present us with beautiful sceneries and art styles, amazing narratives, and greatly written characters, the inherent interactiveness of video games let us experience whatever messages the creator wants to tell in a close and profound manner. Themes such as what was discussed in this video feel extremely personal and impactful when experienced firsthand, something that only a medium as immersive as video games can provide, and that, for me, validates video games as an unique form of art. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.